Hello, we're back once again in our discussion of systematic theology. Today we're going to talk about the historical aspects of natural revelation and natural theology. How has natural revelation been reflected upon down through history, down through church history, and what can we do, what can we know about natural revelation, and how far will that enable us to create a natural theology? Now, just to recap for a moment, natural revelation is God's self-disclosure through nature. That is, through the human being and through creation around us. Natural theology is our attempt to utilize natural revelation to draw inferences about what God is like and about who He is, based only on natural revelation. Now, we are always engaged in the task of doing theology, but natural theology is its own special animal because we're only utilizing natural revelation, what we can know about God from nature, in the task. To really begin our discussion about how natural revelation has been appropriated in history, we've got to go all the way back to the 2nd century, to the time of Irenaeus of Lyon. Irenaeus was the first real theologian of the church beyond the time of the apologists. He was the one who did more reflection upon what it meant to be a Christian than either the apologists of a generation before him or the apostolic fathers of 2 generations before. And the part that I want to discuss today that Irenaeus talked about was his distinction between image and likeness in Genesis 1:26. Now, you're probably already familiar with Genesis 1:26 because it says, "Let us make man in our image after our likeness." Now, Irenaeus believed that those two words, image and likeness, were two different things. You know, we as Protestants tend to read that quickly and just conclude that likeness and image are synonyms, words that mean the same thing. But this was not the way Irenaeus read it. Now, let me tell you a little bit about who Irenaeus was. He was the Bishop of Lyon, which is in France, but he was not from France originally. He was originally from Asia Minor, where he had studied under Polycarp, who had himself studied under the Apostle John. So really, if you want to get down to it, Irenaeus was the Apostle John's spiritual grandson. He never knew John, but he knew a man who knew John. And so even if you disagree with Irenaeus, there is a historical connection there that does carry some weight. But again, Irenaeus believed that image and likeness were two different concepts. Now, his great work is Against Heresies, and I would recommend you read that at some point in your life. Against Heresies is a classic of Christian literature, and it spent a lot of the time speaking against Gnosticism. But as he speaks against Gnosticism, he also expounds upon the Christian faith with great clarity, and it's a must-read for any serious Christian. Now, this is what Irenaeus said. He said that image, in Genesis 1:26, the word image means the rational, intellectual function of God. So we are made with God-like reasoning and intellectual ability. Now, not at the depth that God has, but it's like His. It's a scaled-down model. So that's what the image is, according to Irenaeus. The likeness of God is righteousness. So when God said, "Let us make man in our image after our likeness," Irenaeus interprets this as, "Let us make man rationally like us and with our righteousness." Now, according to Irenaeus, when the fall comes, the righteousness is lost, the likeness that is, but the image, the rational ability of humankind, is retained. So, image is retained, likeness is lost. Now, That's very important, because what that means is that humankind continues to possess, according to Irenaeus, good and trustworthy rational capability. That what we perceive with our mind and what we reason with our intellect can be trusted, and can be trusted to the point that we know we are doing it well and doing it right. So Irenaeus was the first person to lay down the possibility of a workable natural theology. Now, Irenaeus was followed by all who came after him, both Roman Catholic and Eastern Orthodox. So that is why in both Roman Catholic and Eastern Orthodox churches, natural theology is a big deal. Even today, when you see folks talking about natural law, they're usually Roman Catholic. They're Thomist, usually, and we'll get to Thomists here just in a minute. But they're the ones who are upholding this, because their key interpretation of Scripture is Genesis chapter 1, verse 26. Image and likeness are two different things. Image is retained in the fall, likeness is lost. Therefore, our rational faculties can be trusted. And so Irenaeus' idea wins the day. And it remains the day, and it continues to be up into the Middle Ages, in the Roman Catholic Latin Middle Ages. And the next guy we want to talk about is Anselm. I kind of tipped my hand there. Anselm of Canterbury was a great philosopher and theologian combined. And one of the ways that he appropriated natural revelation into natural theology was the ontological argument for God's existence. Now, that's an awfully big sounding word, the ontological argument. But it's Anselm's baby. It's one of the two things he is widely known for, other than Cur Deus Homo, which we'll talk about when we get to salvation. But Anselm was a realist in philosophy. He believed that ideas had their own independent real existence, and things that were common among ideas had real qualities in common. And all Anselm did was extend his realism projected toward God, and say that if I were Anselm, if I can conceive of God, then God must exist. And that's the ontological argument. If we can think of the existence of God, then the ability to think of it implies the reality of the concept. God is, because we can, I'm just reading this to make sure I don't mess this up. God exists because we can conceive of the idea that he exists. And that is Anselm's ontological argument for the existence of God. Now notice that is a fully and completely natural revelation, and therefore a natural theology, because there's no special revelation involved. God has not revealed himself specifically to anyone. We conceive of his existence based on our environment, and more than even that, the power of our mind. It's the power of our mind that allows us to conceive that such a God exists, and therefore, because the idea is real, the reality to which it signifies must also be real. So God exists because we can think of him. Right on the heels of Anselm came Thomas Aquinas, probably the most renowned medieval theologian of the Catholic Church. Aquinas was very, very moved by natural theology, and he expanded and added to Anselm's ontological argument, which, by the way, has been shot full of holes, especially in Enlightenment thinking and Enlightenment philosophy. But Aquinas added to the thrust of natural theology. He said there's not only the ontological argument, but there's 5 such arguments, ontological being one. A second is the cosmological argument, which is the idea of the unmoved mover, or the uncaused cause. It's cause and effect taken in a finite but very long regression back to the first cause, which is itself uncaused. In other words, everything that happens today is an effect caused by some cause. That cause, in turn, is an effect caused by another cause. And so on and so on and so on, back through the annals of time, until you reach a cause which is itself uncaused. That's God. A third argument of Aquinas was his teleological argument. Now that's a big word, but all it means is the argument from design. That if we look at our world, it is very orderly and it shows plenty of evidence of design. Now, if there's a design, there's a designer. Designs don't happen by accident. If something looks planned, that's because it is. And so if we see evidence of design, that's also evidence of a designer. A fourth argument of Aquinas's is his moral argument, and we've spoken about that earlier in a roundabout way, that we are endowed with natural law. We know the difference between right and wrong, and if we have law, there must be a lawgiver. And then his fifth argument is the anthropological argument, which really just speaks to the superiority of human beings as a creation. Humanity's faculties imply God's existence. Now, in Aquinas' day, these 5 ways or 5 arguments were called 5 proofs. That's a whole lot stronger word than an argument. But Aquinas honestly thought that he was proving God's existence. Again, just like Anselm's ontological argument, these have been shot full of holes. But and you gotta admire Aquinas, but this language was pretty ambitious. I don't know that that's proof. If you don't mind, now that you've heard these, just take a moment and pause this video. Just pause it for a moment and see if you can think of some ways that these arguments are not airtight. So just hit your pause button. Take a little walk away from the screen for a few minutes, and then come back and think about it. While you're away, think about it. Think about why these arguments don't completely win the day. Hit your pause button, then come back, and we'll talk about it. All right, what did you come up with? Why are these arguments not so good? I hope you've thought of one or more of these. But first, where's Jesus in all this? I hope you thought about that. Where's Jesus in the whole uncaused causer? Where's Jesus in the unmoved mover? Where's Jesus in our mental understanding that God exists? Where's Jesus in design? Where's Jesus in human faculties? Where's Jesus in moral law? Now, here is where we're going to again reassert what we've said in our Prolegomena series. The Bible presents as the key idea the oneness of the Father and the Son, the homoousion as it becomes known in Nicene language. But where's Jesus in all this? As a matter of fact, where's the God of the Bible? Where's the triune God? These ways don't necessarily imply the God of the Bible and don't really lead us there. That's a problem. Aquinas believed that the God of his mind was the God of the Bible, so that was a moot point. We live in different times than Aquinas, obviously, and I don't think it's a moot point at all. our uncaused causer or unmoved mover had better be the God of Scripture, but it doesn't have to be in this argument. Not only that, but it doesn't necessarily imply that there's only one God. It could be a whole class of gods that has created moral law or designed this world. Doesn't necessarily imply that there's one. Now, we might think that there's one in the unmoved mover or uncaused causer, but again, there's a whole lot of assumption going on there that everything is the result of a cause. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know that assumption is clear. Not only does this not touch the God of the Bible, does it not touch the triune God, or only one God, or only Jesus, it doesn't tell us anything about how to know this God. I've never heard anyone pray to the unmoved mover. And I hope I never do. I've never heard anyone, well, I probably have heard people pray to an idea in their head, but they don't mean to. That's not what they mean to do. So how can you know this God? And that then becomes an issue. Now let's move on to the Protestant Reformation, because that was a major step in the understanding of natural theology. Enter Martin Luther, who was an expert in Hebrew. When he looks at, "Let us make man in our image after our likeness," he does not see what Irenaeus saw. He sees an instance of Hebrew parallelism. Now, you know what parallelism is, even if you've never heard that word. If you look at Hebrew poetry, you see the repetition for effect of the words. Just think of the 23rd Psalm. Most of you probably know that by heart. "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters." Now, do you notice those last two clauses there? He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. That's a parallelism. Those two lines mean almost the same thing. They even mean almost the same thing in their literal language. But when we understand what the psalmist is saying here about what God is doing to protect them, lie down in green pastures, lead beside still waters, mean the same thing. That's a parallelism. And so that type of repetition exists all through the Hebrew poetry of the Psalms and the prophets too. And so Luther says, image in our image after our likeness is a parallelism, which is what he does is equate image and likeness. To Luther, they are the same thing. And it makes the whole theological foundation of natural theology collapse. Because if the image is marred in the fall, so is the likeness, and then therefore our minds can't be fully trusted to draw all these conclusions. There's something wrong with the knower as well as the knowledge. So that's why Protestants who have followed Luther and then Calvin on past him have always been somewhat suspicious of natural theology, because we Protestants tend to believe that our minds are corrupted, our rational faculties are corrupted, and so therefore, even if we do see the evidence, we may not be able to draw proper conclusions from it. Calvin follows Luther greatly. He doesn't dismiss the possibility of knowing God from nature, but he added an important distinction that will come up again when we begin to talk about sin and then when we talk about salvation. According to Calvin, natural revelation was sufficient to damn someone, but not sufficient to save. When you hear a reformed-leaning Protestant speak of Romans 1, the way that's always interpreted is that every human being is without excuse. Everyone knows there's a God, at least deep down inside. We just suppress it. Therefore, the natural revelation we have is sufficient to tell us there's a God. But all that revelation can do is hasten our own destruction. And that was Calvin's important contribution. Now, as we move on to the Enlightenment of the 17th and 18th centuries, the Enlightenment was a time when reason was elevated. And it was so elevated that deism came into vogue. Now, I don't know if you know that much about deism, but a lot of our founding fathers of the United States either were deists or leaned in that direction. A deist is someone who believes in God, that God is the creator, but that he is completely above and beyond the creation. He created the world and then walked away from it. Kind of the classic deist explanation is the watchmaker God. He creates this machine that runs so efficiently, builds into it natural laws and processes, and then walks away from it. The deist must deny Jesus Christ. The deist must deny an incarnation, but he will affirm a creator God who is all-powerful and who is able to build this world. And you see that a lot in our language. Even the some of our founding documents, that man is endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights, among these life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's from the Declaration of Independence and the pen of Thomas Jefferson, who was not a Christian. He was a deist-leaning Enlightenment figure, and endowed by our Creator, not the triune God of the Bible, but the creator of deism. Unfortunately, too, nature in post-Enlightenment modern in the post-Enlightenment industrial modern world, nature became something to be exploited rather than as a pointer toward God. I will say this several times. I'm a product of West Virginia, and when I was a child growing up there, the streams ran orange with sulfur. It's a sulfur iron disulfate is what it is. It's a byproduct of coal mining, and it's a mineral found in coal, and it kills fish and kills all wildlife in a stream. But I come from a place where nature was to be exploited. Finally, when we get to the 20th century, one important theologian when it comes to natural theology was Karl Barth, and his famous word "nein," because he was German, and "nein" means no. He says natural theology is not possible. A lot of people don't like Barth for that, but he says that God is utterly transcendent and we cannot know him from nature. Today, in the intelligent design is making a big stab at helping us to see that there is design and that natural theology is at work in intelligent design. I, for one, happen to think that the design of this world is obvious. The human cell is so complex, the ecosystem is so balanced, that the earth is in just the right spot, that all of these things, that life can occur and can flourish. And not only life, but intelligent life, self-reflective life, life that can give and receive from others. So I'm not completely in Barth's camp that there is no possible natural theology, but I still side probably closer to Barth than Aquinas on the matter. How do we assess the natural theology movement? What do we really see in creation? Some of what we see is good and wonderful. Some of it's beautiful. Some of it's amazing. Some of it is glorious. And then, like the old show Wild Kingdom, where the lion just comes in and just decimates the antelope, some of it is just so out of whack. It's just so wrong. Can nature be an infallible guide? Ultimately, no. Ultimately, no, it can't be, because even nature itself is not what it should be. The sky that is blue today can be a tornado tomorrow. The peaceful stream can be a terrible flood. Even nature suffers from the curse on this earth that came as a result of the fall. And nature cannot be ultimately a clear guide. We don't see as we should. We are a problem. Not only is nature a problem, obviously, but so is our interpretation of it. We don't see it the way we ought to. We don't see clearly. So not only is nature itself flawed, but we as observers and learners from it are flawed. So again, it can't be a guide. Sin is everywhere. The fall is everywhere. The curse is everywhere. And so even though we can know some things about God from nature, we can't know him fully, and we certainly can't get to the Trinity. We certainly can't get to Jesus by the use of nature, which will bring us to our next video clip, the discussion of of special revelation of the Bible and Jesus himself. Now we're going to save Jesus for later, but we really want to touch on the Bible and its importance to us as Christians. So I hope this has been helpful to you. I hope you, even with this one, go back and rethink on it, reflect on it, and settle the matter, at least initially in your heart, about natural theology. There are some things we can know about God, but the most important things we can't know. Not from nature. That takes special revelation, because there is a divide between creator and creature. I hope this helps you. I hope you've enjoyed this video clip. We'll be back next time with special revelation. Thanks. Have a good day. Bye.